morning.
Good morning. I can hear you, just in case you're wondering.
Good.
It sounds really good.
Good to hear you, Doug.
Likewise. I'm double booked. I've got a couple meetings, but I am going to be coming in and out in the meeting, so.
I totally understand. I have like a hard stop at the very end as well. I'm like, we cannot go over. And
yeah.
Somebody wants to take it over.
Exactly. But I did want to set this up so I, could periodically come in. So thank you.
I think it's fantastic. Thank you so much for finagling everything around. I know that's hard to do.
Yep, no worries. Is it just the two of us, or are there more people? Oh, there's 10 people on. Okay. Okay.
Right. Yep, that's
Charlie, you didn't want to come join us today?
I did, and then somebody scheduled a meeting directly at the end of the individual likes to meet in person, so I can come and be with you lovely people in person. I actually much prefer that, especially at that location. I love that location. It's great.
It's much nicer than the Eisenhower location, I think.
Yeah, I love it. It's so nice. It has a very nice energy to it. It's really easy to get to. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect location for the two counties for sure.
Definitely.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Morning, Gary.
Good morning. I'm en route to the physical location, but if appropriate, Tammy, we can, in the interest of time, we can go ahead and kick off the meeting, and I'll just transition once I make it there to the physical office.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start the recording.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
All right, good morning, everyone. Today is August 29th, 2024, 10 a.m. Call to order the CareerSource HP CEO Selection Committee meeting. Tammy, if you will, go ahead and take roll call.
Okay. Sean Butler.
Present.
Gary Hartfield.
Present.
John Howe. Michael Gelato.
Present.
Esther Matthews. Dr. Sarlu. Present. April Newman. Kenny Williams. Mercedes Young. All right, Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
All right, thank you, Tammy. Do we have any public comments?
No, we do not.
All right, hearing none. I wanted to present to the CEO Selection Committee a modification in the agenda, a slight modification, nothing significant, but I'd like to ask for Anna Monroe, the CEO Selection Committee liaison, if she will give an update as it relates to where we are as with our project plan, and then
Motion to approve the change and modification to the agenda. Ken Williams.
Now second, Rebecca.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thank you. Anna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Anna Monroe, for Sources for panel staff. Just wanted to briefly update as it relates to the project plan and where we are. We are in line with the project plan. Today's preliminary review of the candidates brings us exactly where we need to be. Next selection committee meeting, the proposed task was the initial slate. So as we are discussing the initial candidates, it appears that we are in line with where we should be. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any questions from anyone in the committee?
Point of clarity, so just making sure that I have in my mind the proper frame for our discussion today. So my understanding is that today is really about just making sure it's like a temperature check, making sure that we feel like the recruitment process is on the right track so that we're not all anxious about it. But we're not actually voting to move anybody forward or anything like that. Is that correct? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anna. But yes, you are correct, Dr. Charlotte.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But I didn't want to go into too much detail so as not to distract from the intent of this special committee meeting. But if there are no other questions, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Anna. Now, Mr. Newland, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anna, will you be so kind and maybe do a screen share of the funnel report that we provided?
As it pertains to if we want to, okay. Are we going outside of the, is this way? Yes.
Yeah, if you please just put the roll numbers there.
Is this what you wanted?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So, on the last meeting, we were asked to provide, overall metrics on the pipeline, the funnel, what it looks like, the results, etc. So as of August 21st, we have reached out to 164 candidates. Right now, it's more like 180 plus candidates because we continue to proactively source. Out of those initial 164, 96 declined for a number of reasons, which you see there in no particular order. After the initial reach out in the initial search effort, we circled back with 96 of those who have declined, and 2 of them got into the process, which is something that happens when you're doing SEO searches. Sometimes the timing doesn't work for a candidate. Sometimes it works later. Sometimes they need to kind of let the idea marinate a bit longer. And so that's what we see here. Out of those 160, some now 180, probably 150 plus of them are basically presidents, CEOs, executive directors, COOs, EVPs, VPs that we talk to. So we're basically reaching out to the very senior people in workforce development, economic development, and anybody that may have some sort of related role to the job qualification. So this is primarily a job in proactive reach out to candidates through our network, to LinkedIn, to making phone calls, etc. It's not really much of this is not a response to ads. Quite frankly, you see from the bottom, what you get from response to ads is really not what we're looking for. Don't get me wrong, we may get lucky from time to time for the most part, especially people that are really successful in what they're doing are in job searching, looking for job ads. If you can scroll down a little, we have 2 internal candidates in the recent process who were taken through the process, and basically with us qualified in the initial screening, and we have good conversations with them. We talked about these candidates, generally speaking, on the last meeting. we reach out to them, explain to them why they're not sort of meeting their qualifications, and they're both happy to talk to board or management, whatever the case may be, about potential career development plans as well. I think that was important because we don't want to make them feel that they're any less worth because they have the motivation to apply for their job. We actually want to endear them to the organization because they are doing that. So they both express an interest in having this reach out. I'll leave it up to the search committee, the board, and staff to decide what is the best way for us to share, I guess, confidentially who these gentlemen are and who should do the reach out. That's really not up to us, but I guess for you guys to decide. There's about 10 people that haven't responded. We're pretty good and persistent and connecting with people. So when we say that 10 haven't responded, that means we tried a gazillion times to reach out to them. Phone calls, emails, smoke signals, stalking that, you name it. Getting to them directly, indirectly, to people that know them, influence them. It's a really time-consuming effort to get to these people. And they're all getting lots of calls, especially if they're really good at what they do. So it's not that they're like, I am glad to call, let me drop everything I'm doing so I can talk to you. But we do our very best. Right now we're presenting, and I'm beginning to mix for the next presentation. Right now we're presenting on this temperature check 3 candidates. We have 2 more, but unfortunately, to change your minds, one got a counter. Part of it is the fact that the process takes a bit longer. One candidate just got countered, by the board. And it seems to be motivating enough to want to make a move. And somebody else changed your mind about Florida. This may change next week, right? So we continue to source. It may change this week. So just because we're presenting an initial slate for temperature check today doesn't mean that we're done with sourcing. We continue. But I will say this. It is not an infinite source of talent out there. And I would consider presenting to you the idea of evaluating the candidates today, and if you feel that the temperature check is spot on, to maybe next meeting have a more in-depth discussion of the candidates, which before we do, we want to go back to the candidates and tell them, your names will be disclosed, let all the parties that should know that your names will be disclosed because it will become the domain of public knowledge. And we do that very respectfully because lots of people go through this process with the understanding that confidentiality is paramount because if this gets known, they could lose their jobs, So we would ask you, if you decide to proceed with further evaluating any of the 3 candidates we're presenting blindly today, just to give us, the week to talk to them so that they can have a few days to also probably talk to their board chair or board member, or maybe if they're a CEO, maybe they're number 2, because it's going to become known. And then, unfortunately, the National Association of Workforce for postings and LinkedIn has yielded 0. But again, it's not surprising. There are good resources, usually more so for middle management professional and below, more so than CEO level candidates. And Mr. Chair, that is the overall report on the file.
Mr. Newland, I just have one question. So the 2 candidates that had previously declined an hour process, are those 2 of the 3 candidates that we're reviewing today, or are those 2 additional candidates? Just curious there.
Let me see. I think one of them is still here. One of them would be one of the ones that dropped off.
Okay, so previously 2 candidates declined. One has back to the table, is included in today's packet, and one has dropped off. Just want to make sure.
Generally speaking, yeah. Okay. But again, my biggest thing is that we were hoping to bring 5. We're down to 3 because of this. We still have a couple of fillers out there, but our biggest effort right now is going back to this very finite pool of talent within this space and trying to go back to convince them. We actually have one yesterday who is a top-notch candidate who dropped off, who was rethinking it. And if you know, Dr. Sarlo, how many text messages, emails, and phone calls go through a process of trying to persuade somebody to talk to your spouse. This is a really, really, really good opportunity. Come on, take a look. Think about it it again, and they go, well, okay, let me talk to the spouse. And it's a constant back and forth of persuasion, because we know it's a good thing, Dr. Sarla, but not everybody sees this like we do, so we have to continue sort of persuading. We're also not lying. People know that there are challenges as well, so we're not presenting a rosy picture, but we're presenting the challenge as a half glass full, not glass half empty. But people make their choices, and we gotta respect them. Doesn't mean we don't go back and knock on that door again, because we keep trying.
Thank you for that. And I just have one follow-up question, just because I'd be interested in kind of your experience here. In my experience, people have to chase really hard, I end up regretting. But it's just me. Maybe that's just me. So I'm just wondering about, I want to try to avoid what we had last time, which is somebody got through and then withdrew, right? And so, from your experience, is this just part of the process, or that is expected, or are we potentially chasing too hard after somebody who ultimately might get the job and decline it anyway?
So that's a great question, Dr. Sarlo. I think that there's time kills deals, well, time kills searches, right? The longer the search process, the longer the people have sometimes to reconsider. And sometimes if you commit and you go. But if you commit and you go, but then time goes by, it just gives you more time to pause and rethink, and maybe we shouldn't. So it's the psyche of people, right? If you think of where the process began initially, we have presented 7 candidates, out of which the committee decided to proceed with 2. Then we know what happened, and one decided to say, no, I don't want to be part of the process anymore, and the other one, it turned out there was a qualification issue. A slate of 7 is almost on the generous side for CEO search. The fact that we're able to get 3 more now, could have been possibly 5. It's quite the accomplishment. As I said at the beginning when we re-engaged, my goal was minimum 5 and possibly 7. But I also have to sort of be realistic and understand that these processes have, a certain drop of, and the longer they take, the more the drop of, like one of the top candidates we had dropped off because we didn't do anything wrong. The committee didn't do anything wrong, but we're built and in the way in which we're making sure that we want to make sure that every stakeholder has the same participation as it should be, but it also has a price, right, in terms of people dropping off. So I understand the value of doing this, but we also need to understand that there's a yin to every yang, right?
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Robert. I took IT this past week on vacation, and I learned about yin and yang, so I can appreciate the analogy. But I digress. Sean Butler.
Mr. Chair, you're moving kind of methodical now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It seems more balanced.
Yes, the balance. I have the moves and all of it. I can make the circle. Yeah.
Why don't you come to my yoga class then?
All right, I got it.
You know those things. Dr. Sarlo, I think your question about chasing is very appropriate. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was concerned. I think the fact that we're on track is awesome. We all put our stack hands. We had a unanimous agreement to go with Newland. I think we're on the right track. I went back to just pull up SHRM, Science and Resource Management stats to see if we're in the right funnel, the right numbers. Not to challenge you, Mr. Newland, just to see if we're in the right path. But it appears as though we are. Generally they say for an executive role, 100 to 200. We're at 161 on total outreach.
We're like 180 now, sir. But yeah.
Okay, so we're in the sweet spot. Disqualified candidates, it says 30 to 40%. So you got 31, and we're down to between 3 and 7. I think you got to be honest with ourselves. We got 3 candidates at this point, so that's 2%. That's a little lower than the stats. So our pass rate is not as good as it could be. But I'm going to ask an open question. I think we had stubbed our toe pretty hard before are, Mr. Chair, and I just maybe take a few minutes to see where we are on that. Do you think that's part of the problem, or do we need to have a huge marketing event to try to get more candidates interested? But at 180, that's a good number. Yeah. We cast a wide net. We're down to 3. And what happens if we make an offer to one of those 3 and they get a counter offer from their prospective boss? The economy's picking up, unemployment's dropping again. So we're going to be really challenged with finding a good candidate to help both our counties and move forward. So I just. You're asking, just sort of throwing that out as a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, Michael, I just want to have a conversation with Dr. Carlo. Really made me think about that, and now I'm perplexed. So, it's funny you say that, because, and I sort of mentioned this in one of the first meetings, and this is just instinctually where I was coming from, is, and I appreciate Mr. Newland that we had this discussion, which was, do we need to take 6 months off? And I'm starting off by saying absolutely not, but I'm going to say that at that point I was like, do we take 6 months off and let the dust settle a little bit, and then then kind of throw that net back out again, because maybe we need to get away from even a tumultuous time. And one of the suggestions I had thought of, I'm going to say months ago now, was if we could coalesce around an interim CEO, and we could move forward and get a year from now, and that's where I thought Steve was a good candidate, because he's closer to wanting to retire, and then we could transition, we could put enough distance from it. And I'm not saying that that's a good scenario either, because our current scenario, and we don't have to have this as a big discussion, but I don't know how great it's working with co-interim CEOs either. And I say that as a provider who, when we've had questions, it's kind of like, well, I think they're doing the best they can, but this isn't sustainable either. And it probably shows, so that's where I was originally coming from, thinking, and that's why I asked Mr. Newland, like, are we better off waiting a little while? But I don't know that we can wait a little while in the current structure either. And so I've come away from that, but I think that your point is a completely valid one, Sean. I mean, it's, because what's driving me crazy? I'm a Pinellas guy. I live in Pinellas. I've been on the Pinellas board. Why aren't we calling ourselves CareerSource Tampa Bay? Because it's Tampa Bay. Except the Pinellas people don't want that, or the Hillsborough people. We got to get away. I mean, you said it. I think you said it incredibly well. Enough of this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it still feels like until we coalesce around one person, we're going to have this. Well, because I asked the question at the last meeting related to OJT, or the OJT funds and how it's coming down, and
you just want to avoid your work.
What?
Sorry? Only the signer knows.
Okay. So I'm getting 2 sort of distinct answers, and then the 2 of them are like, well, maybe we can talk more about it. We have to, I'm like, God, they're both doing the best they can move forward. But I do think instinctually, part of the problem here is, as I read this funnel, is we look at the 164 candidates, but they circle back to 96 from the first part from a few months ago. Why isn't it 200 new candidates? And I don't think that has anything to do with Newland. I think they're doing their job. I'm just wondering, there's only so many people you can go after for a job like this.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, because you bring some valid points.
Mr. Newland, just a second. If I may, I want to give a couple of statements, Mr. Chair, if it's okay. Yes. First, I've been meeting with our co-CEOs at least once a week or every other week, and I think things are a lot better than they were 3 months ago. I think it's hard for me to say CareerSource, Hillsborough, so I just say CSTB. Too many syllables for me. Yeah, I agree. It's just too many syllables. So I think we're okay there. And you're right. There's only so many fish in a pond. So if we were to go back and try to do another search or put it on pause, you're still going to have the same 180 or whatever, and they're going to want to know why we paused it. There's just a lot. I've been really trying to think important for me as a chair of CSHP, but I think I don't want to take up Mr. Hartfield's time, but it's just a concern I've got. I think they're co-CEOs. Yeah, it's funky, it's awkward, it's all the above. And if I were a shareholder in Pinellas or a shareholder in Hillsborough, I said, whose back do I pat, or whose throat do I choke? And it's a bad analogy, but that's probably where they're thinking, and we've got to get some.
We got to move forward. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I just think that I'm going to tell you as a provider, we have bigger problems than maybe you see as a chair. And I don't mean this as a criticism. Please don't take it that way. I'm wondering, because the question that I asked Steve and Sheila, and again, their answers were fine. This isn't a criticism of them either. It's just sort of the scenario that we're in, was related to one of the workers that we have who's going out trying to go to employers about OJT, and they're saying, all right, we're interested. Well, we don't have any money. Well, hold on a second. It's August. The state year started July 1st. That's not possible. And when you say clunky, I'm telling you as a provider, this is a bigger challenge. And and as a provider, Dr. Sarlo and I at least had a conversation on, here's what we're trying to do in OJT, and here's what she's doing with that new training program she told us about.
Well, we did that in the sunshine.
No, we did. It wasn't a board thing. It was
okay.
It was as two providers who always really push, like we've worked together because with the population I work with, can we come up with ways to have them in the program with people she works with? Yeah. And as providers, it's a concern that we are sort of stuck. Yeah. And the only way to get unstuck to some extent is, I don't know, is to let's get this moving forward. Right? And so it's like that mixed bag, because I agree with your instinct, Sean. If we gave it some time, and I'm not saying this is completely your instinct that's mixed with mine, if we gave it some time away, would we have a bigger pool? Would we have a more interested pool? Because now we're a little bit further away from the merger, but functionally as a provider and as a board member, we gotta get moving. Yeah. So it's kind of that weird mixed bag.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Newman.
Yes, sir. So
April Newman. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're very close in last names. No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple comments on the data in and of itself. Appreciate seeing the data. I think there's some opportunity to potentially dig into it a little bit more to devise a strategy that could be go forward. Looking at 59% of the candidates in a declined state, 31% in a disqualified state. I'm uncertain, Mr. Newland, if the criteria that candidates are declining by or being disqualified by is in order based on the volume of candidates that were within each of those categories. But if there's something that is really disqualifying folks or that's a miss here, we could really use that data to help us refine a strategy and answer those challenges to widen the funnel.
Sure. So happy to answer that. As Sean said, the data you see here pretty much comports with what you see in any CEO search. So there is, I don't think, any particular data there that is different here. The only thing, and we do multiple CEO searches, right, in the nonprofit space, for sure. The only thing that's different here is the length of this process that is causing a bit of a drop-off. Otherwise, we would have had 5 today, and we would have been really, really happy. So there is some of that. In terms of, so in other words, I don't think there is much digging into those numbers to sort of uncover why, because there's nothing here we haven't seen before, just the issue of the length of the process. In terms of whether to hold or continue, we're actually doing another CEO search organization that has somebody who has exited the organization, and without disclosing too much, the leader said, well, I want to stay longer now, legacy, etc. And we already built a slate of around 5 really amazing candidates for that nonprofit organization. And what we told them was, consider that. However, in addition to considering that, slate so you can make choices based on all the data, and then make the choice that you feel is best for your organization. And that's what we would suggest to you. I don't know that 6 months from now we're going to have a much different slate. Maybe different in people, but in terms of the quality, I feel that the three we're presenting to today are A candidates, but they may not be your A candidates, because at the end of the day, when, CEO search committees say we don't want this or that person, it's usually not because they're not qualified, it's just because they feel they may not be quite the fit to the chemistry, the dynamics, which we respect, So I would encourage you to consider that, take a look at the slate, and if you feel, in spite of all that, let's wait, by all means, we respect your decision, but if you say, you know what, maybe we take them through the process and let the chips fall where they may, and you may end up with a great candidate or not. It's not going to sort of take away from the decision of you wanting to wait. But that's what I would encourage you to do. Just take that in consideration. But of course, we respect the will of the CEO search committee, Mr. Chair. Sorry that I kind of answered our question, but I also presented something I wanted to, present to the committee and the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Newland. Dr. Sarlo, you're recognized.
I'll be very, very quick. First of all, I'm just really impressed with this conversation and the depth and thoughtfulness of it on all fronts. And so one of the things I wanted to reinforce a couple of things. First of all, I think it's an and, not an either or. So I think we should, obviously move forward with the candidates that we have, because we have to show that we can work decisively and collaboratively. And to Michael's point, there is real work to be done and to be focused on. And even things as simple as calling a meeting so that things can be discussed more thoroughly is really hard to know how to do that at this point and how to make that happen. And so those are the types of things that are resulting from the situation we're in. And the only way out of the situation at this point is to find the right leader to move us forward. So I think I would be a big fan of moving forward. At the same time, to April's point, when I see like benefits are not dealing, compensation not comparable, those types of things, I'd be super interested in knowing, like, did we, is there any wiggle room there? Did we disqualify people we might be really interested in? So I do think having more information, to her point, about, great candidates other than this reason, right? It's something that might be amenable on our side, would be helpful for us to continue to consider as we move forward. But we do have to move forward. This is a really smart group. We have a great board. We have great support from our counties to get going. And I think it's time for us to make that happen. Doesn't preclude us from looking at this data, considering other candidates along the way.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sarlo. Well said. Any other comments or questions from the members online? Esther, I see your mouth moving, but we can't hear you. If you're speaking to.
I am. Good morning. It only takes 15 years to learn Zoom. I still haven't. And my apologies. I was supposed to be there today, but a meeting ran long. I do have a question, and this was the question that I asked at our last meeting. And if this has been discussed, forgive me for repetition. However, my question last meeting was, what are the disqualifiers? What metric is being used? So I'm curious, looking at the report and seeing that 2 internal candidates were in fact disqualified. What were the metrics used for the disqualifying?
Well, the job description, you want us to go specifically into each candidate and specific disqualifiers for each? I mean, we could do that, but I'm afraid that if we do that, we may be sort of giving away who they are, and I don't know if they'll be open to, their privacy being exposed like that. Having said that, I'm going to ask you also to sort of, trust our ability to disqualify those who are not disqualified, in the sense that we're a professional executive recruiting firm who has a lot of experience doing CEO searches. So I can tell you this, They were not arbitrarily disqualified pursuing any kind of an agenda. If they would have been qualified, we would have been extremely happy. We've had searches where we have internal candidates that have thrown their hat in the ring and they have succeeded. And we certainly appreciate any talent so long as, they're meeting the qualifications that are presented to us. But if you'd like us to maybe take a little bit of a deeper dive, Vanessa is here with us. Vanessa? Could you very succinctly, I don't want to give away too much as to who they are, but maybe provide a little bit of a background as to why they were not sort of meeting the mark in the initial screen?
Of course, if you just give me 1 second. So right off the bat, I can tell you that the two candidates did not have experience with the direct finance. They did not have 7 to 10 years of leadership experience.
So there were some basic disqualifiers. Go ahead.
Right, and more importantly, the 5 years of financial management experience. They did not meet those qualifications.
Now, let me add to that. We don't blanket disqualified people. We look at potential as well. And these two candidates look like very capable professionals that I think with some career development can probably progress in their organizations. But based on that, without entering into too much detail, we didn't think that at this time they would make what we would call, an A candidate to present to the search committee, and we're looking for A candidates.
Ms. Matthews, with hearing those explanations, do you want to, what's your pleasure?
Right, thank you so much, Chair. And so I've circled back to the challenges that we're having with securing a pool of candidates. And I heard, thank you, Vanessa, and thank you, Mr. Newland, for the response to what the disqualifiers were. I think it would be beneficial to this particular body, if not presenting them as formal candidates, presenting them as opportunities to become formal candidates so that we can review. We have had some discussions about individuals not necessarily having experimental experience in the field, but also being able to take on the role. I think someone was mentioned that didn't on paper necessarily have the experience, but has made a phenomenal CEO down south. I would like to see those internal candidate CVs. I would love to see what they look like, and see if there's an opportunity for them to be a part of the formal reviewing.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Mr. Newland, let's get into a little bit about A, B, and C list candidates, and then talk about, based on Ms. Matthews' request, what that could look like in the future, and also let's start to segue into a potential slate.
Yes, sir. So we're here to do the will of the search committee. Also making sure that in the process of doing that, we meet our job, right, as designed in the scope of work. We tend to, very broadly speaking, divide the candidates into maybe A's, B's, and C's. There are some fundamentals we're looking for: leadership styles, merger, change experience, whether it is natural merger or maybe departmental consolidations, things like that. We're looking at size and scope. We're looking at reputation. We're looking at people that are able to exceed some sort of executive presence, but also be welcoming and endearing, to be coalescing in the community with all the appropriate partners. So there's a lot of soft skills that we also look for. An A candidate for us is somebody that has plenty of leadership experience, if you will, sort of been there, done that, if you will, that has some relatable size and scope of managing organizations of significant size, dealing with some change, mergers, transformations, initiatives, etc. And so those are the candidates that we like to present Those are our A candidates. B candidates could be candidates that may have the ability but not the proven track record. We usually don't like to present B candidates, not because they're bad at what they do. They're just not ready to be considered A candidates, and our job is to present you with A candidates. So again, these gentlemen are fine professionals, they really are. But within the definition of what is an A candidate here, they wouldn't quite be there, so it's really up to the search committee if they decide to do that. I think Tony mentioned last meeting that considering doing that is putting somebody through a process that, that apples to apples, they're not going to compare to the other candidates, and is that really good for them from an engagement, motivation, and developmental perspective? That's really for your consideration, but not my call to make, right? A C candidate is just one that either they look good on paper, but upon screening interview, they are either, the resume, you can write anything, but you interview and validate that they're just not there. Either they don't have any experience, or their people skills are really terrible, and those we don't even consider. And that's not even getting to the ones that are just plain disqualified, because we do get people that want to do the job, but I remember one search we were doing for CL in another organization, and we had a group leader for the call center that wanted to be considered for the CL position, and we're like, sorry, but I know you mean well, but no, I don't understand. I am a leader. Yes, you're a group leader, and the size of scope, and we encounter those. We encounter managers, supervisors, very great, wonderful what they do, but not quite A candidates, right? And again, I'll say it one last time, an A candidate versus a B candidate doesn't mean that a B candidate is a bad professional or manager. It's just when it comes to the definition of what defines for this search an A candidate, they're just not going to be there. Again, Mr. Chair, and committee, your decision, right?
All right, thank you, Robert. Ms. Matthews, what's your pleasure as far as those two internal candidates?
I think, and certainly, to the majority of the group, but I would like to see the two internal candidates as well. Although recognizing and respecting Mr. Newland's explanation, I believe that there is value in someone working with an organization, working closely with the leadership team, and maybe on paper it does not reflect their abilities. However, experience is what gauges the ability. And so I would love to see those internal candidates, and I'm more than okay with them being categorized as B candidate pools, but I would like to see their qualifications and their experience.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, friendly suggestion. I think I said the last meeting that regardless of what happens, I, as the board chair, would certainly talk to both internal candidates. It's the one thing we lack, I think we mentioned it earlier, is a cohesive leader at the top that can create development plans, help our employees along, understand what we need to do to progress the organization like any CEO should do. I'm not opposed to introducing these two candidates to the public world. I just think that we need to be cautious how we do it. Because the last thing you want to do is have, I wouldn't want to be exposed if I was a B candidate and then it comes out in the New York Times, Sean Butler's a B candidate. I think, Mr. Newland, you need to talk to those two internal candidates and ask them if they're even ready to be exposed to the public, as Ms. Matthews suggests, because I think that's just a slippery slope. Just my thoughts. It scares me, one of those candidates.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to, and one of the rare times that I disagree with my esteemed colleague, Ms. Matthews, who we agree on everything all the time, don't we, Esther? Is I think we have to trust Newland and his team to say, these might be two really strong people, but I'm looking at these summaries, and I'm pretty sure I know who one of the internal candidates is, and candidate's fantastic, a great employee, right? These resumes are a little bit of next level, right? So I'm like trying to say, all right, do we put that person through this level of exposure when we might have candidates that, shoot, all three of these people are more impressive than my resume, right? You know, it's like, and I'm not saying mine's better than that person. I'm just saying that, you know, I kind of agreed with what you said last time, Sean, which was, you know, we have a search firm, we've given the criteria, we've beaten up the criteria, and they're saying that these people aren't qualified. We have to trust that. Or we have to restart this entire process over, which none of us want to do. You know, and I think that I'd like to believe that maybe as they're still processing through, maybe we wind up with a fourth or a fifth. Yeah. And let's move. You know, I just, because that public process, that public scrutiny, that can be also kind of brutal. Yeah. And then I start thinking functionally, we choose someone who's not one of those two people. Right? Yes.
Yeah. As analogies go, I would just offer, we can argue about filling our dance card, but we're only going to marry one, right? So I think, like, we should look at the candidates that we have today that are, you know, seem to be very, very strong candidates from my assessment, and I think, Michael, you were saying that as well. Really, you know, analyze the benefits of what they would bring to the table. I think that will be eye-opening in terms of, like, whether or not we think we don't have potentially the right person in this mix already. But I agree. I just want to reinforce the idea that we need to. But I would ask that this committee move on to reviewing the candidates brought forward today, so we can have some discussion there. Because I think that is critically important to asking our original question as to whether or not we are on the right track to have someone who we would be interested in hiring into this role.
I think the conversation definitely is lively and intelligent.
Before we do that, I do want to finish the thought.
Yes,
I'm sorry, Michael. I interrupted you. I'm so sorry about that.
I'm used to it. No, I'm kidding. You know, there's going to be a level of whoever we hire. Yeah. You know, I don't know what Steve's plans are. You know, once we hire someone, I don't know what Sheila's plans are. I don't know the two internal candidates who aren't Sheila and Steve. You know, I don't want to say damage control, but we need to be mindful that these are valuable employees, and if the person I'm thinking of is incredibly valuable, I don't want to lose that person. Right. You know, and if we make this a more public process, and if he's the one who rises to the top, that's great, but what if not? And we're going to be going through a process here, and here's reality, and this is what you're probably starting to hear more and more of. We've got to get to the merger a little bit more. We're going to have to make some really tough decisions. Right. And you know, whether we say HP or I still think we should go back to Tampa Bay because it's Tampa Bay, but putting that aside, you know, we've got to get to making some hard decisions and also retaining talent, because there are going to be some people who say, hey, we hired Gary, and Gary's great, but you know, he's not my style, so we're going to lose some people. We might gain some people, you never know. But you know, I just think that I think you alluded to it last time, Sean. I think that opens up a little bit of a Pandora's box of some unexpected consequences when we start saying, because now are we reaching a little bit? And we want to be so mindful and careful to develop the talent we have, but we might be doing the opposite.
Okay. So, very good. No, that's very good. So, in that vein, I come back to you, Ms. Matthews. Hearing your colleagues and peers weigh in on it, what's your pleasure? I want to make sure that this committee feels like, you know, they have been heard throughout this process, and I want to make sure that we continue what we've been able to garner in terms of credibility and relationships. So, what's your pleasure, Ms. Matthews?
All right, so many who know me know that I'm not a stranger to standing on the side of the road by myself. However, I respect my colleagues, and Michael is absolutely correct. We typically agree because I think our brain works very similar. Surprising, I know, for y'all. I still hold value in internal candidates. And so I remain in the space that I would love the opportunity to just review. Not that we don't move forward with what has been presented, but I think that if they're in a process where we're looking at A, B, C candidates, B candidates had value, and that's why they were labeled as such. But having presided over many meetings, I understand majority rule, and so I will stand in support of whatever the majority is, while still maintaining that I do see value in those opportunities to review. Thank you, Chair.
Yes. Thank you. You're welcome. One second, Sean. Mr. Williams, Ken Williams.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you for everyone that attended today. I appreciate your presence here. I'd just like to offer from my viewpoint of living in Pinellas and living in Hillsborough for many years on both sides of the bay, that just as a coach, I'm an advocate for homegrown team. And once you know your territory or your turf or your product or your vocation, you can bring that to the greater masses. And I think that if we have people that are internal, available and qualified, and know the different spokes in the wheel, because every spoke is necessary to make that wheel roll. Some spokes get loose and we tighten them up. Tire goes flat, we change the tire. But going forward, I love promoting hiring local, buying local, and living local. So if we could revisit some of those scenarios, I think that we'll come out a winner on all sides. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Mr. Butler.
First, this has been an awesome discussion. I realize we're getting close to the witching hour and everybody had to go. I really appreciate the discussion. And I know Dr. Matthews, majority rules, but I think the way I've been trying to practice as the leader of this CHHB for the last couple of months is everybody's voice is so freaking important to me. So I think we're trying to have one group, not two, and that's important. I think there might be an opportunity, just throwing this out, is we go through the process and then we can revisit those two candidates after we go through the first initial slate and have a discussion. But I think more importantly, we should talk to those candidates at some point along the process, and whether that's Sheila or Steve or me, I think that's imperative. But I don't think I want this to be a majority rules discussion. That's my point.
Sorry, what would be a good compromise, and I know this sounds like some flip-flopping here, is maybe what I just think is a flip-flopper. If you go to those two internal candidates and say, listen, we respect this process, because I agree with what he said. I mean, listen, one of the things that's been a concern for me is that we have someone who's from the region and say, look, you based on resumes, you might not have been in that first group, but we're willing to move you into that to let the board, make an informed discussion to understand the public scrutiny that's going to come with that, and see if they still want to be, considered. And if they do, is it going to kill us to have them go through the process to a certain extent? I don't think it is.
But I think what Sean had to say about the along the way piece is the piece that I want to emphasize. Like, I have no problem bringing in those two candidates if the group feels that is worth everyone's time, including the candidates. But we've got to do it along the way. Like, we have to keep moving and get down to the work of the selection process. And so if we're going to do that, we should move them in quickly, consider them along the way, and get on to our next step here.
Thank you. I just want to thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sean, for your comments. And I agree with Dr. Sarlo and Michael. I definitely want to keep the process moving. Absolutely do not feel that we should pause to do, but I think while we are moving forward, Mr. Newland has the ability to also move along with the train with the two internals so that they are brought in and give the opportunity for us to review, talk to, engage where they are. I do think Michael's suggestion of Mr. Newland, having a conversation with them. Is this something that you truly want to go through? Because it does shine a light on you. And if they come back and say, you know what, you're right, don't want to, then I'm okay. At least we valued their willingness to lend their experience to the process. And they may say, I absolutely want in, which means that they're ready for the scrutiny. And then if they're ready, there's value even more so in that. I just think that two trains should be moving at the same time while we're not stopping the process. Thank you again for respecting the voice.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Thank you, Dr. Sarlo and Ms. Lazo, Ms. Butler. So it sounds to me like we should consider a motion.
Mr. Williams, hands low.
Mr. Williams, did you have a question or a comment for us? Or was your hand just up from the previous question? I guess not. Okay.
So sorry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Sean.
No, I just want to recognize Mr. Williams. I'm sorry.
Yes. All right. So.
Hello. I'm sorry. This is Mercedes. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm zooming from the phone because I went to the wrong building. But I would like to add something to this, if Mr. Chair allowed me, please.
Yes. You're recognized.
Okay, thank you. Great morning to everybody. One of the things that I would like, because I am a firm believer in one of the influencers for our county to have 30% in all projects that are 300,000 or more participation of locals. At least minimum 30%, and now it is, it's actually established. So with that background, I will say that I would think that it would be, especially for this particular structure that we are trying to build, that we will look at it from a very pragmatic and non-biased way. And what do I mean by that? To take all applications as they come and allow the company that we hire to put them through the process just like they will do anyone else. And the reason why I'm such a strong believer on that, because if you ask me to hire your uncle or mine, I won't hire mine, because that's the nature of being a human, right? We want to support our own, well, most humans. But anyway, but with that said, in this particular scenario, we're looking for a fit. And maybe my uncle doesn't fit. And I love him dearly, and I think he got all the capacities to grow. Nevertheless, I would like us to please stay very neutral and pragmatic about the decision. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Young. I think the best way to get to a solution is to entertain a motion moving forward the internal candidates. I think that's the democratic way of coming up with a solution that the committee is comfortable with and can get behind.
So moved. I'd like to move forward the motion to move the internal candidates in along with the process and all of the great things that our chair just said. I'm not saying it properly, but yes.
Just friendly amendment on that, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
And any other qualified candidates that Newland finds along the way.
All right.
I accept the friendly amendment.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor.
I'll second it.
It's been properly seconded by Mr. Lazo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The motion passes unanimously. Now, we are at the point in the meeting.
Mr. Chair, point of order, just for clarity for me. So what the committee voted on is to include the two candidates in the slate to be presented to be taken to the whole process, correct?
So I'm going to ask Tammy to read back the motion if she has it verbatim. So I want to make sure you're 100% clear, Mr. Newell.
Yeah, we want to make sure that our mandate is executed properly.
Yes.
Moving forward with internal candidates. promotion before the internal candidates and do them along the way, still working on the other candidates. I don't have the exact wording. Here, it's all just.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps what I'm trying to understand is what move forward means.
Didn't specify what.
Yeah, I actually want some clarity on that too, because I know Mr. Newland's right. Are we saying that we're moving them forward with the other three, or we're moving forward to continue having them as part of this discussion at this point? Okay. I think that's a little bit different. Maybe it's not. Yeah. All right. So, Ms. Matthews, with the motion that we just presented and carried, there's some clarification needed on that. So.
Yes, sir, Chair. I'd like to withdraw the motion, but present it a different way, right? So in the discussions, we stated that Mr. Newland, there was an opportunity for him to reach out to the internal candidates to see if they had an interest in it, and if so, then vetting them and moving them forward along with our process, and then interweaving them in. So my motion is for clarity. Putting it forward that the internal candidates are vetted and asked by Mr. Newland if they want to move forward, and if so, move them forward along with the current three. If not, we continue to move forward without, but giving the opportunity for them to be included and not excluded. That's the motion.
Point of clarification, because I think this is what you mean. I just want to make sure. So our next step, my understanding is to vote to who we are going to be pushing forward to that next phase. So what I understand you're saying, Esther, and I would be in support of this, is the internal candidates, we would be part of deciding as a group whether or not the internal candidates, along with the external candidates, move forward to that next phase. Okay, thank you.
That is correct.
Thank you.
I have a question about that motion. Is there something stopping any candidates, internal or external, to submit an application for the position? Because this kind of makes me, is that implied, or is there something I don't know about that, or are we open to people that feel that they are capable of holding the position and they are just applying, whether it be internal or external?
Hold on, Chair. So just for clarity, and I think we're being recorded, when there's a motion on the floor, it either has to be seconded or dies, and then questions can be asked. I just want to make sure we're adhering to the process.
Thank you.
In following Robert's Rules of Order, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second it. My
Ken Williams.
Madam Chair, for the record, can we repeat the motion so everybody's clear on what it is? Because we've added a lot to it.
Okay. So, Ms. Matthews, if you can, please repeat the motion so we make sure that we're clear on how we report that. Well, before you do, Esther,
She needs to do the motion.
yeah, I know, but I want her to make sure, because I'm thinking what she's thinking, and to clarify in your motion, are you talking about re-vetting those two internal candidates so they understand that they were not, that's where I'm getting confused, is are we re-vetting them to say, are you interested, but are you interested in understanding the scrutiny and understanding that, in a first read you hadn't moved forward, but if you would like to continue in the process, I want to be clear on that.
Right, so it's the verbiage. It's the verbiage. I think the verbiage is where it's confusing. Mr. Newland has already vetted it and placed them in categories A, B, and C. I'm simply saying we need to move forward with the candidates A and B and whomever else is qualified, and Mr. Newland can have a conversation today, hopefully, or when he can contact them. Are you okay with moving forward with the knowledge that there's scrutiny? And then we just simply move forward. I don't think that there's a need to vet in the concept of how vetting is, because Mr. Newland, if I'm not mistaken, they've been vetted. They just were vetted at a lower level than category A, or not vetted or qualified, put as a qualifier at a lower level than A.
Yes, Ms. Matthews, and I will add to that, if you are to proceed with this motion, from an an ethical standpoint as a firm, which we build a reputation upon, if we are going to present a candidate whom we feel that are not going to be at the level of the A candidates, not because they're bad people, bad professionals, it's just fit for the job, we have to be very clear with them in how we feel about it. Because reputationally, we never want a candidate to say, you took me through a process knowing that I was not with the top of the list and you ran me out to dry and this is your fault. Because that can happen too for us, right? So we have to be very clear to them that this is a request from the committee and that we wish them well in the process, and it's not our decision to sort of select them, but to present them, and we will do that to the best of our ability. But that means not painting everybody in a wonderful light, but presenting how we feel are the facts in terms of their qualifications.
Fantastic. So thank you for that, Mr. Newland. So here is the motion that I would like to present to the body. Moving a motion forward that we accept the 3 candidates as presented and the 2 internal candidates with the understanding of the qualifier by Mr. Newland and company, and also with the understanding that Mr. Newland will have a conversation with them to see if they want to move forward. That's the motion.
Okay. Michael, is that clear? Yeah, I'm good. All right. So we have a motion on the floor. I'll second the motion. Seconded by Mr. Alonso. Any questions? Just discussion.
Yes. Mercedes Young. So I have a question again, because we worked very hard to put these qualifiers together. So again, my request to be pragmatic. And what I mean by that, I don't know, and please anybody explain to me, somebody or clarify for me, if there has been any obstacle for an internal candidate that keeps him away from applying.
No, there has not been.
Okay, so with that answer, what I would like to definitely take into consideration is to make no exceptions of the rules of the requirements to fulfill this position. If they would like to apply, and if they qualify, definitely to move forward, because it's what's right, it's fair, and it is the structure of the game. But if we wanted to make exception of the rules because they are internal, definitely I will not support that. Because that's really biased. I'm sorry to use such a strong word, but we have to work with people that qualify, whether it be internal or external, within the tier concepts that we have supported Mr. Newland's company to work with.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Questions?
Just a question. I know we're overstarting. So, Mr. Chair, I thought our purpose today was to look at the 3 or 4 or 7 candidates and then have another meeting after Mr. Newland gets back from his international trip the week of September 9th to officially look at those candidates on paper, names, everything. We're going to know who they are at that point. I'm not opposed to looking at the internal candidates. I think we're getting the cart before the horse. So what I'm thinking is, my mind, where we were having an earlier discussion, was to talk about these candidates at some future point, but not make them part of the A priority. And I love what Mercedes said, but I don't think we can have absolutes either. So I'm not going to vote against the motion, but I just think we really need to be thoughtful about what our intention was. Mr. Chair, I think we got off down a rabbit hole.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on the motion? All right. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's do a roll call. Okay. Yeah, I was going to suggest that actually. Please.
Don Butler,
I'm abstaining from this one.
Gary Garfield,
Aye.
John Howe, Aye. April Newman? Aye. Kenny Williams? Ken Williams? Mercedes Young?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Carries. All right, thank you, everyone.
Ken Williams, my call dropped. Aye.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. All right, so, Mr. Newland, it is 11:09. We are slated for 10 a.m. to 11:30 today. We'd like to get into the slate of candidates.
Yes, sir.
And then segue into time blocking. So we have 3 minutes for you. No, I'm just being facetious. So if you will, let's jump into the slate of candidates and the time blocking.
Yes, sir, with pleasure. And, you can, I think Anna, Tammy sent you a copy of the blind summaries. We did our best to sort of disguise to see that is possible, who they may be. So what I want to do, you have the material, hopefully you've read it, so I'm not going to read it out loud for you. What I'm going to do is just make some brief comments on my thoughts on them, beginning with candidate number 1 and number 2 and number 3. As I understand it today, like Dr. Charles said, it is not to take a deep dive, because I'm afraid if we dive too deeply, we may actually uncover the individuals, and I don't want to do that to them. But just to understand, in the temperature check, is this the kind of people we're looking for? So, candidate number 1 has about 15 years of experience in the workforce development area. In leadership, 10 years in workforce leadership. This candidate has managed organizations of over 100 employees and budgets of over $20 million. Experience in turnaround as it relates to cultural transformations, not so much mergers and acquisition experience, but we feel that the turnaround of an organization culturally to be producing results is a good benchmark. Also, this is, a highly sought after and highly recommended by, their peers across the workforce development community. And those, constant recommendations we hear of this candidate go a long way to sort of validate that the history of work is commendable and reputable. Based from my interviews, I believe this candidate could be really great at building strong community relationships and getting everybody to row in the same direction. In terms of education, the candidate has a master's degree. So overall, meeting size, scope, change management related, experience, reputation, results, it's all there. Candidate number 2 has been in workforce development specifically for nearly 25 years. Currently manages a small staff of around 20 people on a budget of over $12 million, but has managed up to $25 million budget-wise before. Where this candidate, I think, provided a really great highlight is that this candidate is in a region where you're not dealing with counties, but municipalities. So the candidate was able to get over 40 municipalities to sort of reorganize into a centralized workforce board, which speaks to the candidate's ability not just to get people to colonize, but also to create, operations optimizations of multiple workforce entities as well. The candidate's organization is highly respected in the region as well for the results they have achieved. And this is a candidate that has been in the same organization for over 20 years, so it speaks a lot to the longevity and the belief in the candidate's, ability to perform over many decades. But the candidate is ready for a move and looks forward to Florida. Like the idea of Tampa, who wouldn't, in my opinion. Candidate number 3 is also a different look. This is a person who's had a combo of economic development and workforce development, which I think makes the candidate interesting. Having had a feel sort of the if you will, the customer side of the equation in workforce development, which is really, really good. The candidate has been over 7 years in workforce development as a leader, manages a smaller staff of 20, but has managed over 50 staff before. And although the current budget of a small workforce board is around, say, about $4 million. His previous budget responsibility was $54 million in organization of a total of $72 million. So size and scope and previous experience is also there. So this is, in my opinion, a person who wouldn't come in to rehearse for the job, but to actually also do the job really well, having been there like that. What I really like about this candidate, well, a couple of things. On the candidate's role right now, CEO, the candidate has been there over 5 years. Also has an MBA on the education side. A lot of board experience as well, and probably the ability to have merged 4 entities in the past with a lot of experience in change management and performance optimization. So this is sort of a been there, done that candidate when it comes to merger integrations, or if you will, post-merger integrations as well. And generally speaking, Mr. Chair and committee, those are the 3 candidates that we have so far. And again, hopefully next week we'll have more.
All right, very good. Any questions, comments, concerns from the committee? Is there a way, without giving anything away, I guess, are all of these candidates from out of state? Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Hard to answer that one right now, sir.
Okay.
So I can say that they come from different parts of the country, and we discussed extensively the attributes of moving to Florida, Central Florida, specifically and I agree, it's easier to say the Tampa Bay area than the HP area because it sounds like Hewlett Packard sometimes. But yeah, they understand the region, they visit the region, they like the region, they will look forward to living in the region, all of that.
What I like about these candidates, and I commend you for finding the candidates that have merger experience, have lived to tell that story, particularly people who led those efforts and then remained on to lead the organization. So I think for me personally, that was a part that was critically important, and I see that evident in all 3 candidates.
Well, Dr. Scott, it was duly noted and heard, and I also agree. Because what we see oftentimes, and again, being not just a headhunting firm, but a consultancy in talent management, is that post-merger integration can create a lot of heartache. It can create a lot of disengagement and loss of really good people. So finding people that have been there, done that, have tried, failed, and succeeded, it was important to us in the process.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Newland.
Thank you, sir.
Next, let's get into time slots for September. Yes, Anna.
I apologize. Before we move to that, because I feel like we're moving off of the topic, is there a decision on these candidates for the full dossier to be presented at the September 4th meeting?
Good question. So that was my understanding, was that we're presenting them to the committee. Is there an action that needs to be taken?
I just wanted from a clarification standpoint, because I wanted to make sure that there was a clear understanding of what the next steps are with these candidates.
When is the next CEO selection?
It's September 4th.
September 4th?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're canceling the September 4th.
Okay, so then that would move us past the timeline. And I just wanted to point that out. The timeline has the initial slate of candidates to be presented at the September 4th meeting. So I just wanted to point that out. The next meeting after that would be September 18th, which would then bring us into the time frame where we're looking to schedule those initial interviews. Just wanted to, from a timeline standpoint, that would take us outside of it.
So yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm going to be working during the day in Singapore in an HR conference. Having said that, 10 a.m. is 10 p.m. over there. I would be awake enough, I think. I don't want to delay the process and be a detriment to the committee, and so I'll be I could avail myself to move the process along if the committee feels that these candidates are worthy of taking a deeper dive. We will be reaching out to them over the next few days and making that happen.
Okay. All right. That being said,
Mr. Chair,
yes, go ahead, Sean.
So, when we set this schedule up, I think we set it up to be aggressive. I'd rather not rush unless we absolutely feel like we have to rush. I think we let Mr. Newland do what he needs to do with the candidates, continue looking for good candidates in the next couple of weeks. And I say we reconvene on the 18th and give an update on the 19th for the board meeting. Is that right? Board meeting's on the 19th?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
I'll talk to him about that for sure.
Okay. Just a friendly thought. I don't want us to, I think between today and the 4th is a holiday, and one day. What does it say, right?
Yep. For the committee, there was a friendly thought suggested by Sean that we meet, in lieu of meeting on September 4th, we meet on September 18th. And the next board meeting, the full board meeting, is September 19th. And on the 18th, we'd have the ability to, for the 18th, what are we looking to do in that meeting? Are we starting interviews on the 18th?
Just looking at the profiles, I believe.
We'd be looking at profiles on September 18th.
And the 2 internal candidates.
And the 2 internal candidates. And September 19th, we'd have the opportunity to report out to the full board and have a conversation there.
I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that the candidate dossiers for profiles are going to give you a picture on them. I would invite you to consider discussing this with the board after your interview, so you have a deeper perspective, not just what's on paper, but actually your experience in interviewing them, at least via Zoom in the committee. It's just going to deepen. You really need to speak to their qualifications and what they may or may not bring to the table. I submit that respectfully for consideration. And also, as it relates to the timeline, since we move back next week's meeting to today, it could also be possible for us, since if not the 4th, maybe perhaps move the meeting from the 18th to the 11th. I'm open to that if you are. I want to work with your agenda. I'm just trying to demonstrate that, we're willing to adjust and adapt as you need, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Robert.
And Mr. Chair, all I plan to share on the 19th was that we had 3 or 7 candidates, and the committee's been busting their butt to move this along.
Okay.
We have just a slight pause and maybe have a discussion at the board meeting.
Yes.
Of what the board wishes to be involved and how they wish to be involved at the next step. So I think I don't want to push our agenda on the board.
Right.
I think the board has to have that back, because I think that's where we failed last time. Just a thought.
I think your instincts are right on, Sean. I think that after the meeting on the 18th, we should be comfortable saying we feel like we've got a slate of 5 people that we're going to continue forward on, and then talk exactly that. We want to really engage the board in how they want to be involved in the process. So that's kind of where I thought you were going, and I think that's right there.
Okay. Very good.
And I don't think we should push back to the 11th, Mr. Newland. I know a lot of people, with it being 9/11, have other things. I think it's going to be a little bit tricky.
Yes, sir. You're right. So Mr. Chair, when it comes, because I think we're talking about potential time slots in addition to the next meeting, would it be okay if then after this meeting, I get with Tammy and we start? I don't think we need the whole search committee and utilize their precious time in doing the admin, planning of potential time slots, but we'd be looking at, assuming that the search committee wants evaluating the 3 external and 2 internal candidates, plus whatever else we find that they're deemed worthy of interviewing. We've pre-planned some interview time slots for probably early October, and with Tammy, we can work on that, sir.
Yes, that's fine. Anna is the designated liaison, but Tammy and Anna, of course, work great together.
Yes, sir. We'll work with them both.
is the committee okay with meeting on September 18th? I want to make sure we're good with that. September 18th as opposed to September the 11th.
That's a scheduled meeting, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, good deal. So this is what we'll do. We'll move forward on meeting on September 18th at 10 a.m. using hybrid format. On that meeting, we will look at the profile of the candidates that Newland and Associates have to present. And we'll review the profiles of those potential candidates, and then have a profile and number to present to the full board on the 19th, and bring forward the question of how does the full board want to participate in the interview process. Did I read that correctly? All right, good deal. Yes, Anna.
If I just may add too, from the standpoint of the activities, just want to clarify that these candidate packets, Mr. Nolan, will be coming directly from you to the selection committee. It should not come through Tammy or I. It should come directly from you. I just wanted to point that out. And then from the standpoint of the September 18th for meeting, where those profiles are being sent directly to the committee members, just wanted to understand from an expectations type standpoint, when you do plan to send that to the committee members, just so that I can just do a check with you to make sure that it's sent out on a specific time frame.
Yes, and that's, I thank you so much for keeping us in the straight and narrow. I really, really do. So I was looking at the agenda, and if we're going to meet on the 18th, we still have to prepare the profiles for the two internal candidates, plus whatever other candidates may come up that may agree to, be put through, the process, although you haven't seen them blindly. If they're okay with that, we'll submit to you as well. We would not want to miss out on a really good candidate. So I'm thinking that probably, I'd say we're looking no later than 5 working days in advance. That might be no later than, say, the 12th of September to submit that. That gives you, Thursday, Friday, then Monday, Tuesday, and then we meet on Wednesday.
And also from the standpoint of one of the activities that we had as well is to kind of provide the committee, and I don't know from the standpoint of the committee wanting this in advance, but an understanding of if these candidates are being reviewed, how the committee would want those to be ranked, so that they have somewhat of an understanding of how they're looking at it, or if ranking is something that will be discussed at the meeting that's held on the 18th. Just wanted to have that opportunity for the committee to discuss that prior to receiving those packets.
I see. Mr. Chair, you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you, in the vetting process, were planning to rank the candidates, or what would that look like?
We would not rank the candidates because, in our view, when we submit an A candidate, basically they all can do the job. It comes to a very personal experience of where is the chemistry, where is the clicking, if you will, and we cannot really account for that. But we wouldn't be submitting anybody who we wouldn't feel couldn't do the job, Mr. Chair. There are different ways that, it can be as easy as open conversation in depth of the profiles. We want to go forward with this 2, non-1, or 3 plus the other 2, or the 2 internals will decide not to go forward. That is your choice to make. Or you may want to, as a committee, take a vote, yea or nay, moving forward on each candidate. You may do that as well, which would be probably the easiest way to do, because I suspect sometimes when when somebody sets a motion and says, well, I submit a motion that we move forward with these two candidates, now these other ones, people may just kind of move along with it, but maybe a yay-nay vote on each candidate would be the best way to go. And by the way, this is not a voting to hire anyone, it's just saying, yes, we want to interview. So from that perspective, it should not be, like a whole matrix of specific qualifications. You'll get to do that in the actual interviews.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Robert.
My pleasure.
All right. Any other questions, comments,
I apologize. I just wanted to make sure we touched on the key points. And from the standpoint of the next meeting, I understand that the candidates will be presented. We'll have this dialogue on who's going to be moved forward. But just also wanted to talk about, we'll schedule those meetings in October, or those interviews, but from the standpoint of the discussing and having that finalization of who we're going to move forward will also be a topic. The platform will also be a topic. The topic of the interview committee will also be a topic. So just wanted to add that would also be part of that next committee meeting to prep and to stages for the initial interview process.
all three of those discussion items are important. Please make sure they're part of the agenda so that we can move that to the board and get final approval.
Are you suggesting that we might not have enough time to do that in a meeting, or do we need to?
No, I just wanted to clearly state that should be part of the meeting as well.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns from the committee or Mr. Newland online? All right. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Great discussion.
Absolutely. Take care.
Take care.
Awesome. Bye-bye.